Good evening. You've arrived at a quiet space intended for rest. There is nothing you need to prepare for, nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to understand or remember. This time is not for effort. It is not for focus. It is not for improvement. The words you hear are not instructions. They are not guiding you somewhere. They are simply present, steady, and predictable. You do not need to listen closely. You do not need to follow each sentence. If your attention drifts, that is expected. If the sound becomes part of the background, that is fine. The body already knows how to rest when the environment is calm and consistent. It does not need to be reminded how to do this. It does not need encouragement. Right now, your body is being supported by the surface beneath you, by gravity doing what it has always done. There is no need to hold yourself in place. Breathing is already happening. It continues without being guided. It does not need to slow down or change. It does not need to be noticed. This recording is not here to create an experience. It is here to remove the sense that something needs to happen. Everything you'll hear is based on well-established scientific understanding, not ideas meant to surprise, not theories meant to impress. Just observations that have been measured, tested, and repeated over time. They will be shared slowly, without urgency, without expectation. Nothing here depends on staying awake. If sleep arrives, it can arrive quietly. If it does not, there is no problem. The information does not build toward a conclusion. There is no sequence that needs to be followed. There is nothing important to miss. You may notice pauses between phrases. Those pauses are intentional. They allow the nervous system to settle without being asked to do anything. For now, it is enough to be here, resting, supported, unchanged. The voice will remain even. The pace will remain steady. There will be no sudden shifts in tone or direction. The science will continue softly in the background, at a pace that does not rush toward an outcome. You do not need to stay with it. You do not need to check where you are. Everything necessary for rest is already in place. As you continue resting, there is no need to adjust your position unless your body naturally wants to. If you are already comfortable, stillness can remain exactly as it is. The body does not require perfect alignment in order to rest. It does not need symmetry. It does not need to be arranged in a particular way. Right now, the surface beneath you is already doing most of the work. It is supporting your weight. It is carrying the parts of you that do not need to be held up. There is no effort required to stay where you are. Breathing continues on its own. It arrives, and then it leaves, without instruction, without timing. There is no need to deepen it, no need to slow it down, no need to follow it from beginning to end. The body has been breathing long before attention was placed on it. It knows how to continue without being guided. The muscles of the face may already be softening, not because they are being asked to, simply because there is no reason to stay alert. The area around the eyes can remain neutral. The jaw does not need to be held in place. The tongue can rest where it naturally settles. Nothing needs to be released on purpose. The shoulders may feel heavy, not pulled downward, just supported. as if gravity is evenly distributed, without preference. The arms are where they are. They do not need to be positioned carefully. They do not need to match each other. If one side feels different from the other, that is normal. The body does not require balance to feel safe. Any remaining tension does not need to disappear. The body can rest, even when some areas remain active. Rest does not depend on complete relaxation. Lower in the body, the chest continues to rise and fall. The rhythm may change slightly from one moment to the next. That change does not mean anything needs attention. The abdomen moves gently with each breath. There is no need to hold it in. No need to control its movement. It responds automatically to pressure and release, just as it always has. The legs are already supported. Their weight is being carried. There is nothing to keep upright, nothing to stabilize. The feet do not need awareness. They do not need warmth or tingling or sensation. They can remain quiet, distant, and unremarkable. As these conditions remain steady, the nervous system begins to register the absence of demand. There is no task, no response required, no signal asking for readiness. This is often when physical effort gradually decreases on its own, not because it is being directed to, but because there is nothing pressing to respond to. Thoughts may still appear. They can be fragments, images, incomplete ideas. They do not need to be organized. They do not need to be followed. They can move through awareness the same way sound moves through a quiet room, present for a moment, then gone. If attention drifts away from these words, that is completely fine. The body does not require continuous input. It responds just as well to consistency and tone, to the absence of change. The voice you are hearing is not here to guide the body. It is here to remain steady, predictable, unremarkable. There is nowhere else to be, nothing else to prepare for. You can continue resting exactly as you are, breathing, supported, unchanged. The body already understands how to remain here. As the body remains supported, attention often becomes less defined, not focused on any single sensation, not directed toward any particular thought. Awareness begins to spread out. It no longer needs to stay in one place. There is no clear moment when this shift happens, no signal to mark it. It unfolds gradually, without announcement. In everyday experience, many changes happen this way. They do not arrive suddenly. They do not ask to be noticed. Light fades across the evening without a sharp edge. Temperature shifts slowly as night settles in. Sound tends to soften as activity decreases and distances feel larger. These transitions do not require coordination. They do not depend on attention. They occur whether or not anyone is observing them. The body is familiar with this kind of change. It evolved in environments shaped by repetition and gradual variation, not by constant alertness. Because of this, predictable conditions tend to feel safe. They do not demand quick reactions. They do not signal urgency. As attention loosens, it may move between sensations without settling on any one of them. A sense of weight, a sense of warmth, then nothing in particular. There is no need to hold on to any of these impressions. They can come and go on their own. In the natural world, many large processes move at a pace that is easy to overlook. They continue steadily, guided by consistent conditions rather than sudden forces. Once set in motion, they do not need to be corrected. They do not need supervision. They persist simply because nothing is interrupting them. When scientists describe systems like this, they often rely on simple principles repeated across many situations. The details can be complex, but the underlying patterns remain stable. This stability is part of what makes such processes easy to listen to. There's nothing hidden behind the description, no surprise waiting to appear, just continuity. As the voice continues at the same even pace, it does not ask to be followed. It is not meant to hold attention. It is meant to be consistent enough that attention does not need to stay alert. This is often when thinking becomes less structured, less verbal. Not because it stops entirely, but because it no longer needs to organize itself around tasks or decisions. Time may begin to feel less segmented. Minutes do not need to be counted. There is no sequence to track. Words can arrive without forming clear ideas. Pauses may feel longer, or they may not be noticed at all. None of this requires effort. None of it requires awareness. The transition continues quietly, from focused listening to background sound, to something even less defined. You do not need to notice when this happens. You do not need to stay with it. The process unfolds on its own, and the steady science story will continue in the same way, unhurried, predictable, without moving toward a conclusion. When the body is described as feeling safe, it does not refer to an emotion. It is not the same as comfort. It is not the same as happiness or relief. In biological terms, safety is a condition. It describes what is not happening rather than what is. A body that feels safe is not receiving signals that indicate immediate threat. There is no need for rapid response, no need for preparation, no need for defense. This assessment happens continuously, without conscious thought. The nervous system is always gathering information from the environment: sound, light, temperature, movement, consistency. These signals are compared with patterns the body has learned over time, patterns associated with stability, with predictability, with the absence of harm. When those patterns match, the body does not need to stay on alert. This process does not require awareness. It does not require interpretation. It does not rely on words. It happens before thinking begins. Safety, in this sense, is not a feeling that rises. It is a background state that allows other processes to continue without interruption. The body does not need proof that everything is fine. It only needs a lack of evidence that something is wrong. Research in physiology shows that when threat signals are absent, energy use shifts. Resources are no longer directed toward readiness. They are no longer held in reserve for quick action. Instead, the body maintains basic functions at a steady pace: breathing, circulation, digestion, repair. These processes are always active, but they operate most efficiently when they are not competing with signals of danger. This does not mean the body becomes passive. It remains responsive. It simply does not stay prepared for immediate change. Importantly, safety does not require stillness. The environment does not have to be perfectly quiet. The body does not need to be completely relaxed. What matters more is consistency. When sound remains even. When light does not shift abruptly. When there are no sudden demands. Under these conditions, the nervous system can remain open rather than guarded. Safety is also not something the body decides once and then holds on to. It is reassessed moment by moment. Small changes are noted. Large changes are noticed more clearly. But when the overall pattern remains the same, the assessment does not change. This is why predictable environments tend to feel easier to be in. Not because they are interesting, but because they do not require monitoring. The body does not need to check what comes next. It can remain where it is. In scientific models of stress and recovery, this state is sometimes described as low demand. Not the absence of activity, but the absence of urgency. In low-demand conditions, the body does not need to prioritize speed or strength. It can prioritize maintenance. This includes subtle processes that are not felt directly. Hormonal regulation, immune activity, neural repair. These processes do not announce themselves. They do not produce sensations that need attention. They continue quietly, as long as they are not interrupted. Safety, then, is not something added to the body. It is what remains when unnecessary signals fall away. It does not need to be created. It does not need to be reinforced. It is already present when the environment does not ask for anything. As the body registers this absence of demand, there is no instruction to follow, nothing to optimize, nothing to hold in place. The state maintains itself, and because it does not rely on effort, it does not require maintenance. It simply continues. When there are no signals indicating immediate danger, the nervous system does not switch off. It simply shifts its priorities. This shift is not sudden. It does not happen all at once. It unfolds gradually as conditions remain steady. In simple terms, the nervous system has more than one mode of operation. Some modes prepare the body for action. Others support maintenance and recovery. When threat signals are present, the body favors readiness. Muscles remain prepared. Attention narrows. Energy is held close. But when those signals are absent, there is no reason to stay in that state. The nervous system begins to distribute energy differently. Less is reserved for immediate response. More is allowed to flow toward ongoing processes. This does not require a decision. It does not require awareness. It happens automatically, guided by patterns the body has learned over time. Heart rate may remain steady, or it may slow slightly. Breathing continues at its own pace. None of these changes need to be noticed. What matters is not the direction of change, but the lack of urgency. The body no longer needs to ask what comes next. It does not need to stay prepared for interruption. In this state, signals within the nervous system tend to move more evenly. There are fewer sharp changes, fewer sudden shifts. Communication between systems remains continuous, but quieter. The brain does not stop receiving information. It simply stops treating that information as time-sensitive. Sound can be present without needing interpretation. Light can remain without requiring response. This is often described as a state of openness rather than alertness. The body is still responsive, but it is not braced. In research on autonomic function, this shift is associated with increased stability. Not stillness, stability. Processes that support digestion, tissue maintenance, and immune function continue without competition. They do not need to work faster. They simply need space. This space appears when there is no demand for speed or strength. Importantly, the nervous system does not need confirmation that it is safe. The nervous system is not trying to achieve rest. It is simply responding to conditions that allow rest to occur. When those conditions remain unchanged, the response remains stable. There is no finish line, no point of arrival. The state maintains itself quietly, as long as it is not interrupted. And because it does not depend on effort, it does not require attention. The system continues on its own. When the body remains in an environment that does not change suddenly, another process begins to take place. It does not announce itself. It does not produce a clear sensation. It is simply the continuation of trust. In biological terms, trust is not a belief. It is not a thought. It is a pattern of expectation based on repetition. When conditions remain the same, the nervous system does not need to check for updates. It does not need to scan for what might come next. Predictability reduces the need for monitoring. This does not mean the body stops paying attention. It means attention no longer needs to be sharp. Rhythm plays an important role in this process. A steady rhythm does not carry information. It carries continuity. Breathing has a rhythm. The movement of the heart has a rhythm. Even the cycles of day and night follow a rhythm that does not rush. These patterns do not explain themselves. They do not signal meaning. They simply continue. When the nervous system encounters rhythm without interruption, it recognizes it as non-threatening. There is nothing new to respond to, nothing that requires adjustment. This recognition does not depend on awareness. It does not require learning. It reflects how biological systems have evolved to function in stable environments. For most of human history, survival did not depend on constant novelty. It depended on recognizing when novelty was absent. When the environment remained consistent, the body could conserve energy. It could shift away from readiness toward maintenance. This shift does not happen because the body is trying to relax. It happens because there is no reason not to. Trust, in this sense, is passive. It is not something that is built deliberately. It is what remains when nothing disrupts the pattern. Sound that remains even does not ask for interpretation. A voice that does not change direction does not need to be followed. When tone remains neutral and pacing remains steady, the nervous system does not need to assign importance. Nothing is emphasized. Nothing is highlighted. This absence of emphasis is meaningful to the body. It suggests that there is no hierarchy of events, no signal that one moment matters more than the next. Under these conditions, time can begin to feel less segmented. Moments do not need to be tracked. The body does not need to anticipate what is coming. Biological trust does not rely on reassurance. It does not require explanation. It arises from exposure to sameness. As long as the pattern holds, the response holds. This is why environments that remain predictable often feel easier to remain in for long periods of time, not because they are engaging, but because they do not require management. The nervous system does not need to intervene. It can remain open without tension. Over time, this continuity allows the background state to deepen. Effort remains low. Readiness remains unnecessary. The body is not waiting for something to happen. It is responding to what is not happening. And because nothing is being asked of it, nothing needs to be withheld. The rhythm continues. The pattern remains unchanged. There is no signal indicating that this will shift, and in the absence of that signal, the body continues to trust the environment it is in, without effort, without attention, without needing to know why. By now, there is no need to keep track of what has already been said. Nothing here depends on remembering details. Nothing is building toward a conclusion. The patterns described continue whether or not they are followed. The environment remains steady. The rhythm remains the same. There is no new direction to anticipate, no shift that needs to be noticed. From this point on, listening closely does not offer any advantage. The information does not become more important. It does not become more complex. Everything essential has already been established. If attention drifts away, nothing is missed. If the sound becomes indistinct, that is fine. Words can continue without being assembled into meaning. They can remain as sound, as tone, as rhythm. The body remains supported. Breathing continues at its own pace. There has been no change in the environment. There is no signal suggesting that something new is about to happen. This is a point of permission. Permission to stop following sentences. Permission to stop holding ideas together. Permission to let the voice move into the background. The processes being described do not move forward in the way stories usually do. They repeat. They remain. The nervous system does not need to monitor repetition. It does not need to evaluate it. Repetition does not require response. From here on, the information density remains low. No new concepts will be introduced. Nothing will require understanding. The same conditions continue to hold. If sleep arrives now, it arrives without interruption. If awareness fades, it fades naturally. If awareness returns briefly later, it can drift again just as easily. There is no correct way for this moment to unfold. Some nights, rest settles quickly. Other nights, it settles in layers. Both are normal. The body does not need instruction. The nervous system does not need reassurance. The steady rhythm is enough. The voice remains even. The pacing does not change. There is nothing to prepare for. From this point onward, the story does not progress. It stays. And in that steadiness, there is room for sleep to continue, quietly, without effort, and without needing to be noticed at all. Nothing has changed. The environment remains the same. The tone remains even. The rhythm continues without interruption. The body is still being supported. There is no need to check that support. It does not need confirmation. Breathing continues at its own pace. It arrives, and it leaves, without asking for attention. There is no signal indicating that anything new is about to happen. The nervous system responds to this lack of change by staying where it is. There is no reason to shift, no reason to prepare. Safety in this state does not increase or decrease. It remains steady. The body does not need to hold on to it. It does not need to maintain it. It persists because the conditions around it persist. The same sounds continue, the same pacing, the same absence of emphasis. Nothing stands out. When nothing stands out, nothing needs to be evaluated. Thoughts may still appear. They do not need to be complete. They do not need to connect. They can pass without forming direction. If attention moves away from these words, the rhythm remains. If the words blur together, the tone remains. The system does not rely on clarity. It relies on consistency. The body is not waiting for resolution. It is not expecting a change in state. There is no before and after to compare. This steadiness does not require effort. It does not require participation. It remains even when awareness fades. The same conditions hold from one moment to the next, and because of that, the internal response remains unchanged. There is no advantage in staying alert. There is no benefit in tracking time. The repetition continues gently, not to reinforce meaning, but to maintain the same background state. Safety here is not active. It is not something being done. It is the absence of interruption. The body responds to this absence by continuing its internal processes quietly. Nothing needs to be accelerated. Nothing needs to be slowed. The system does not aim for rest. It simply does not prevent it. Words continue to arrive. They do not carry new information. They do not need to be held. They can dissolve into sound. Pauses may feel longer, or they may not be noticed at all. There is no requirement to stay present with them. The repetition does not build toward anything. It does not prepare the way for what comes next. It simply remains. And as it remains, effort stays low. Attention stays diffuse. The body continues responding to what is not happening. No demand, no urgency, no change. The steady state holds on its own. Over long periods of time, stable conditions allow the body to remain unchanged, not motionless, but uninterrupted. Biological systems are shaped by duration rather than speed. They respond more to what persists than to what happens briefly. When safety remains present over time, the nervous system does not need to update its assessment. There is no new information to process, no adjustment to make. This kind of stability does not announce itself. It is noticed only by the absence of disruption. The body has evolved to function within environments that change slowly. Day shifts into night. Seasons move gradually. Temperature and light adjust without sudden edges. Within these conditions, internal processes unfold at their own pace. They do not hurry. They do not compete. Repair, regulation, and maintenance occur quietly. They do not require awareness. They do not require supervision. These processes are not scheduled in moments. They extend across hours, across nights, across long stretches of time. Because of this, there is no advantage in monitoring them closely. The nervous system does not need to check whether they are happening. It only needs to remain uninterrupted. When the environment stays predictable, the internal response remains the same. There is no need to conserve energy for sudden change, no need to hold readiness in reserve. The body can remain open to duration. In this state, time does not need to be divided into parts. There is no sequence to follow, no interval to measure. Moments blend into one another without clear boundaries. This does not mean time stops. It means time no longer needs to be tracked. The same conditions repeat quietly, and repetition extends the sense of continuity. The body does not need reassurance that safety will continue. It responds to what is present now. And when what is present does not change, the response does not change either. This is why prolonged stability often feels easier to remain in than brief calm. It does not require effort to sustain. The longer nothing interrupts the pattern, the less effort is needed to remain within it. Awareness may narrow or widen without intention. Thoughts may slow or pause. None of this requires direction. The system continues responding to the absence of urgency. Long timescales do not carry emphasis. They do not point toward an outcome. They simply allow processes to unfold without pressure. As this sense of duration settles, there is no need to anticipate what comes next. Nothing is approaching. The environment remains as it is. The body responds as it has been. Time continues, but it does not need to be noticed. And within that continuation, there is no demand placed on attention at all. As the minutes pass, the need for words to carry meaning begins to fade. They do not need to form clear ideas. They do not need to connect to one another. They can remain as sound. The voice continues at the same pace, even, unchanging. There is no emphasis placed on any phrase. No sentence stands out from the next. Words may begin to blur together. Pauses may feel longer, or they may pass without being noticed at all. There is no reason to follow where one thought ends and another begins. There is no advantage in keeping track. Language does not need to explain anything now. It does not need to point toward understanding. It can simply move through the background. The body does not rely on words to remain here. It does not need reminders. It does not need reassurance. Sound continues without urgency. It does not signal change. It does not introduce direction. If meaning dissolves, nothing is lost. Nothing depends on holding on to it. The nervous system does not require clarity at this stage. It responds just as well to consistency. The same tone remains present. The same rhythm continues. There is no indication that something new is about to happen. No shift in pace. No change in direction. Breathing continues without being noticed. The body remains supported. The environment stays the same. Awareness can drift freely. It does not need to settle anywhere. If attention fades completely, the sound remains. If attention returns briefly, it does not need to stay. Words arrive, then they pass. They do not ask to be remembered. The spaces between them are enough. Nothing here needs to be completed. Nothing needs to be held together. Language can soften into tone. Tone can soften into rhythm. And rhythm can remain even when meaning is no longer present at all. The process does not move forward. It does not arrive. It simply continues. The rhythm remains. Nothing shifts. Nothing resolves. The same steady conditions continue to hold. The body is still supported. Breathing continues without attention. There is no change in the environment. The voice remains present, but it does not ask to be followed. It does not ask for focus. It does not point toward anything new. Words may arrive without forming sentences that need to be completed. They can pass through without direction. The space between them is enough. There is no signal marking the passage of time, no boundary between one moment and the next. The nervous system does not need to check for change. It does not need to prepare. Nothing here depends on awareness. If sleep has already arrived, the sound continues without being heard. If awareness returns briefly, it can drift again just as easily. There is no advantage in staying awake. There is no outcome to wait for. The same tone continues, the same pace, the same absence of emphasis. Nothing is being introduced. Nothing is being concluded. The processes described do not slow down or speed up. They continue at the same unhurried pace. The body responds to what remains unchanged. Words no longer need to carry information. They no longer need to be understood. They can exist only as rhythm, as quiet sound in the background. Breathing continues. Support remains. The environment does not shift. There is no reason to follow this any further. Nothing more is required. The night continues. The steady state continues. And the quiet remains.